Hello and welcome to today's Q&A with Sophie Bridgen, who is a trauma-led informed coach and leadership coach. And we're going to be doing a brilliant Q&A today all about how you can redefine success and embrace your feminine strengths in a masculine workplace. And then, me and Sophie were having a chat just now because I've got experiences of working in a very, very masculine environment, and Sophie has as well. So we were going to be talking all about how we as women can thrive in those overly masculine environments whilst embracing our feminine strengths. So thank you so much, Sophie, for joining us today. If you've got questions when you're watching, please do pop them in the comments. Let us know your experiences working, whether you worked in a toxic masculine environment or not, and how you found that and how you coped during that time. So before we start, Sophie, do you want to give a little bit of background as to who you are, what you do, and what inspired you to this piece of work in helping women to thrive in masculine environments?
Yeah, so hi everybody. So I was in the army, and when I first joined, out of 145,000 people, 4% were female. So it was a tiny, tiny amount. And without going into the sort of details, and we've talked about this in sort of other chats, I was on tour, and what had happened before is I'd been in an environment which was a training environment, and that was much more equal. There was a balance of sort of masculine, feminine, non-binary, it was much more equal, and that culture was healthy. But then I sort of got sent on tour, and I was attached as the only female to an infantry battalion of 800 men, and there were just a catalogue of horrible things that happened. And from that, I sort of spiraled downwards and ended up with really bad mental health sort of issues. And in my sort of healing sort of journey, for want of better words, what I realized is I really lost touch with who I was. And I really looked at myself and was quite honest about how I was in that environment, and I felt very unsafe, how I'd changed to survive, and how I ultimately wasn't authentic. And through that journey, I guess that in looking at myself and being honest about it, I've sort of reclaimed, I think, who I am. And that's what I'm really passionate about. Really sort of aligning who I am with my values. So I'm congruent with what I say and what I do, and I'm not wearing that mask. And that's what I'm really passionate about. Like, how do we thrive in these kinds of environments without losing ourselves, which is what I did. I didn't get it right. I'm not sitting here going, I got it all right and I've got the answers. I got a lot of it wrong. But in sort of rebuilding myself and thinking about who I wanted to be, how I wanted to come across, there were a whole range of things that I had to build, from boundaries to, speaking my truth, not being frightened about speaking up and how I was seen, all sorts of things. And that helped me actually internally be a much more confident person than perhaps I was, because it was this strength of mask that I was hiding who I truly was.
Yeah. So first question that we've had, in your experience, what are the most common challenges women face when trying to succeed in male-dominated environments?
I can go by my experience and what I've observed, and there's obviously sort of a whole ream of other people's experiences out there. But for myself, I think I shut down, because it was inherently sort of masculine, that more emotional part of myself. So, there is an aspect of me which is assertive and driven and, sort of competitive. But it was at the detriment of other parts of me, which was the more empathetic, authentic and collaborative part. But I think that came about because of my survival. And when I look at what was this sort of very masculine culture and what was deemed of value, it was stoicism, cutthroat competition in some aspects of the culture. It was control and domination. And actually that didn't really sort of fit me at all. And I think I've observed the roles that some females have also played, and it can be everything from a people pleaser because you're surviving, through to being one of the boys, through to shutting down and being quite masculine. They're just some, or using our femininity, in a manipulative way. And it's totally understandable when you're that minority. But actually, in essence, we're shutting off such a great part of ourselves. And if you think about what they're talking about in leadership at the moment, about the skills we need, creativity, authenticity, vulnerability, or all of those sorts of things, well, that comes from being whole, and we all hold masculine and feminine energy, whatever gender we claim to be. And that means claiming all of ourselves. And that's what I'm really passionate about.
Brilliant. How can women effectively navigate workplace policies and politics? Sorry, not policies, workplace politics, and build strong professional relationships while staying true to themselves?
This is a tough one because it's really interesting at the moment. I actually went back to the army to call them out and spoke up about what had happened to me. And this wasn't about me going, hey, look at me, etc. It was actually to raise my concerns with what was going on in the culture and to make sure that no other person had to go through what I went through, because it was so incredibly painful. But what I've actually been met with is being shut down, my voice being shut down, and things being brushed under the carpet. And when you're met with something like that, unless you can find collective voice, and that's what you really need to find, you need to find allies. Because I think when you are that minority, it's very difficult to have a strong voice. But collectively, actually, you can push through sort of agendas. And I think it's a really interesting time, Liz, because workplaces are becoming more diverse, but at the same time, we've got kind of this clash of norms and values. We were talking about it before, where you've got deeply ingrained sort of values and beliefs of how it's always been, and then you've got this sort of minority that is growing, that is going, well, hang on a minute, the systems aren't fair to me, the processes and policies aren't fair to me. And it's such a slow moving ship that it takes time. So I would say patience, find your allies, but I think really connect to your values, because I don't think, through all the pain that happened, I actually think how I was acting in the past wasn't aligned with who I truly was and my values. Going through all that pain has actually sort of led to real growth in who I am. And I think when you become more whole and confident in your own self-identity, you tend to find your voice. You're less willing to put up with things. You're more willing to nip things in the bud. And if you have that patience to be in that kind of culture, great. But sometimes you have to look at that organizational culture and go, are my values aligned with the organizations? And then it's up to you, isn't it? The decision is up to you whether you stay or go.
Yeah. What advice would you give to women who feel they need to adopt masculine traits to be successful in their careers? How can they maintain authenticity?
I would say personally don't, because you're not being true to yourself. And actually, you know, there is great gifts in being whole.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there is, I think, you know, there is this kind of patriarchal sort of set of values that we've been conditioned by, or we've internalized, which changes our behaviors. There's expectations about who we should be. The messages are all there, but it doesn't truly align with who we are. Now, if that works for you and you want to get to the top, go for it. You know, there's no judgment. And if that makes you happy for a certain period of time or a long period of time, great. But for me, it didn't work. And I don't see why you shouldn't be able to be your whole self. They talk about it, you know, bring your whole self to work, don't they? I'm not sure that we're completely there yet, but we have to role model it. And I also think we've got a responsibility for our younger generation, you know, and that change is happening now. So who do we want to be? And then how do we get to be who we want to be without it knocking our sense of self, I think. And that's where the boundaries come in, you know, the confidence in speaking up. And it's real internal confidence rather than the external mask that we play. That makes sense, Liz?
Absolutely, yeah. How can you make your voice heard without sounding bossy?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't stop how people want to perceive you.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
that's good advice.
You really can't. You can't control anything outside of yourself. The one thing that I've learned that's really helpful for me, because I have come to it to sort of clash with other people's ideas and values, you know, is that, you know, it's about holding on to your internal self in difficult conversations, staying as calm as you can. And, you know, that helps you communicate in a measured way. However, yeah, if somebody wants to see you a certain way, you know, when we think that's happening, sometimes we change, don't we? That's when the people pleasing comes in, and we want to get them on side. Forget about the validation and come from a place of truth, and that is definitely being connected internally to yourself and your values, you know, and that is powerful in itself, because when you have this outside disagreement or people against you, you can stand there quite strong. I'm not saying it's comfortable, but it's allowed me to stay strong and resolute and calm and, you know, keep in my lane and with what I believe, you know, and that helps you not pacify to somebody else's wants and desires, you know, and it's a kind of, you get what you need too. And I think that's another problem. We defer sometimes, you know, because other people disagree, and we shut down what we need.
Absolutely. That's really good. I mean, people are going to judge you, aren't you? Whatever you do. So actually, you might as well be judged for being who you are, and you know, if you've accepted that and you're happy with that, then
it's hard though, isn't it? You know, around that acceptance, because it still wobbles you. And I don't know what other people think, but I think as females we do internalize stuff, you know, and we don't like, conflict is difficult. But actually, you know, I lost myself, and I will never lose myself again. And that means staying true to who I am and checking in with myself.
Absolutely. How do you deal with men talking over you in meetings?
Sometimes I just wait for them to stop, and I'm silent, and, you know, just let them go. If I get to a point where I'm, excuse me, you know, you lose your, you know, you lose it. Sometimes I would nip it very quickly. Sorry, I was speaking, so it is that assertiveness. And again, that comes from building that confidence around, I'm not here to please and be sort of kind and friends with everybody. Actually, I was speaking, I have a point, let me finish.
Yeah, good. And then final question, how can organizations create a more inclusive and supportive environment that allows women to flourish regardless of the industry's dominant culture?
Yeah, good question. They've all been great questions. So it's interesting, the scenario I talked about and being sort of shut down and brushed under the carpet. And I think I spoke up, and I think there is this in this culture, this specific culture, I could be seen as a whistleblower. And I think that sort of connotation is a real problem, because if leadership see somebody is speaking up when they're actually concerned about something that's wrong, that not only affects them but other people, and that's not healthy in the culture, why do we term it as whistleblowing, for starters? Because actually it's emotional courage for somebody to speak up about something. So it's our perception of how we see people when people do speak up, and also what do leadership do with those scenarios. They shut people down, because that then tells the rest of the culture, well, if I speak up, there's no point because I'm getting shut down. And so the problems keep going on in the culture. So how it's managed is important. But I also have seen leaders threatened by a difference of perspective. And difference of perspective doesn't have to be a threat. It can actually be create innovation. It can bring ideas. And I think it's how leadership field these differences and actually get them on board instead of shutting them down. That is, a key part of it.
Brilliant questions. That's all we've got. So thank you so much. If anyone has any questions afterwards, where can they connect with you, learn more about you, and how do you help people, particularly women, to thrive in masculine dominated environments?
Yes, so you can find me on LinkedIn, and I have a website which is www.beyourbest.org.uk, and you can connect with me there. And how I help women is, who are they're stuck in unhealthy power dynamics, and ultimately they want to reclaim their self, their authentic self. And perhaps it's causing emotional struggles. It could be that they're going through quite a lot of sort of trauma. I help people grow and figure out, is this the right environment for them? Who do they want to be, and what is their authentic self, so that they can move forward in the workplace, but in life, because it affects their relationships, it affects our sense of self. We take ourselves everywhere, right? We're the common denominator. So it affects everything. So it's about, them being their authentic selves and watching themselves grow. So that's how I help people.
Brilliant. I will put all the links in the show notes. Thank you so much, Sophie, for joining us today. Thank you for everyone that has submitted questions. Obviously, the replay will be available on the website as well if you've missed any of today's chat.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.